I broke down when they played a family Christmas video and realized I wasn't in a single scene. For context, I'm the middle child in a pretty big family. I've got 2 older siblings and 2 younger ones. Growing up, I always felt like the forgotten kid. You know how people joke about middle child syndrome? Well, I'm practically the poster child for it. My older siblings were the golden kids, and my younger ones were the babies who could do no wrong. I was just there. Anyway, fast forward to now. I'm 27, married, and live a few hours away from my parents. I still visit for holidays and birthdays because, despite everything, I love my family. Last week, we had an early Christmas get-together since my siblings all have plans with their in-laws on the actual day. Everything was fine at first, eating, laughing, the usual chaos. After dinner, my dad pulled out some old family videos he had digitized as a fun surprise. Everyone thought it'd be cute to take a trip down memory lane. At first, I was excited. I mean, who doesn't love a bit of nostalgia? But as the video started playing, my excitement quickly turned into something else. The clips were from Christmases over the years, and as they rolled on, I realized something. I wasn't in any of them. Like, at all. There were plenty of shots of my older siblings opening presents or decorating the tree, and tons of my younger siblings running around, being adorable. But me, it was like I didn't exist. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe I'd show up in the next scene, or the one after that. But no, scene after scene played, and I wasn't in a single one. By the time the video ended, I was choking back tears. When the lights came back on, everyone was laughing and reminiscing, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. I mumbled something about needing air and practically ran outside. My husband followed me and asked what was wrong. When I told him, he hugged me and said he'd noticed it too, but didn't want to bring it up. That just made me feel worse. Like even he could see how invisible I was in my own family's memories. After a few minutes, my mum came outside and asked if I was okay. I kind of snapped and told her what was bothering me. She looked genuinely confused and said something like, "Oh, I'm sure you were in there somewhere. Maybe you just missed it." That was the final straw. I told her I didn't miss anything and that it hurt to realize how little I seemed to matter back then. Her response? "Well, we were busy with the other kids. You were always so independent. We didn't think you needed as much attention." I didn't go back inside after that. My husband and I left early, and I haven't spoken to my mum since. My siblings have been texting me, saying I'm being overly sensitive and that it's not a big deal. One of them even joked, "Maybe you just weren't doing anything worth filming." It's not just the video, though. It's everything it represents. I always felt like I was an afterthought in my family, and seeing it so blatantly confirmed on screen was like a punch to the gut. I keep replaying the whole thing in my head, and I don't know if I'm blowing this out of proportion. Maybe I should have just laughed it off and let it go. But part of me feels like this was the final piece of proof that my feelings about being overlooked weren't just in my head. Has anyone else gone through something like this? How do you even begin to address something so deeply ingrained without sounding like you're holding a grudge? I don't want to ruin Christmas for everyone, but I also can't pretend like this didn't hurt me. Update 1. About a week later. A lot has happened since that night, and I wanted to give an update. To answer some recurring questions first, no, I didn't watch more of the videos after we left. And yes, my husband is my rock. He's been my anchor through all of this. So, after my post, I spent a couple of days just processing everything. I decided I needed to talk to my mum again, but this time in a calmer way. My emotions were raw that night, and I wasn't exactly articulate when I tried to explain how hurt I was. I figured a more measured conversation might help her understand my perspective better. I called her last weekend and asked if we could talk. She sounded hesitant, but she agreed. I explained how watching those videos wasn't just about the clips themselves, it was about what they symbolized. For years, I felt invisible in my own family, and that night felt like tangible proof of those feelings. Her initial reaction was defensive. She said things like, "You're reading too much into it," and "We didn't deliberately leave you out." But then she paused and admitted, "Maybe we didn't realize how much we focused on the others. You were always so quiet and mature for your age. I guess we took that as a sign you didn't need us as much." Hearing her say that was bittersweet. On one hand, it validated my feelings. On the other hand, it stung to realize how easily my needs had been overlooked because I wasn't as needy or loud as my siblings. I told her that independence doesn't mean a child doesn't need attention or love. She said she understood but needed time to think about everything. This part was less productive. My siblings have been split on the issue. My younger sister, who has kids of her own now, reached out and said she could see why the videos hurt me. She admitted she remembered me being left out of things growing up, but thought it was just because I preferred being alone. My older brother, however, was dismissive. He called me dramatic and said I was making something small into a big deal. He even suggested I apologize to Mom for leaving early and making her feel bad. That comment lit a fire under me. I told him this wasn't about guilt-tripping anyone. It was about addressing years of bottled-up feelings. He shrugged it off, saying I was being too sensitive. A lot of you pointed out that this situation might be more about long-standing family dynamics than just one night of videos, and I think you're absolutely right. My family has always been a little chaotic, and I think I got lost in the shuffle because I wasn't the type to demand attention. I've been reflecting on how much of this has shaped who I am today. I'm fiercely independent and tend to downplay my emotions, even to myself. But this experience has made me realize that being strong doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending things don't hurt when they do. Edits and clarifications. Some of you asked if I'd ever brought up these feelings before. The answer is no, not really. I think I was too scared of being labeled difficult or ungrateful. But now I see how damaging that silence has been, not just for me, but for my relationships with my family. Another question I saw a lot was whether I'd noticed this pattern in other parts of my life. Honestly, yes. I've always been the peacemaker, the one who avoids conflict at all costs. This whole situation has been a wake-up call for me to start advocating for myself, even if it's uncomfortable. I'm planning to visit my parents next weekend to have another conversation with my mom, this time in person. My husband will come with me for support, but I want to do most of the talking myself. I feel like this is a chance to start healing not just for me, but for my relationship with my mom. As for my siblings, I'm not sure where things stand. I'll reach out to my younger sister again since she seemed more empathetic, but I think I need some space from my brother for now. Update 2 weeks after the visit. A lot has happened since my last update, and I want to share what's been going on, especially after my visit to my parents' house. When I arrived at my parents' place, I was anxious but determined. My husband came with me, but we agreed he'd hang back and only step in if things got heated. I wanted this to be about me and my mom, face to face, without distractions. We sat down in the living room, just the two of us, and I started by saying how much I appreciated her taking the time to talk again. I wanted to approach it calmly because I know my mom can get defensive if she feels cornered. I explained that I wasn't trying to point fingers or dwell on the past, but I needed her to understand how the years of being overlooked had impacted me. I told her that the family videos weren't just about missing footage. They symbolized a pattern I'd felt my whole life. My mom listened, which was a good start. She didn't interrupt, which is rare for her, and I could tell she was really trying to take it in. I could see her emotions bubbling under the surface. Her eyes were glassy, and she kept twisting her wedding ring, something she does when she's nervous. When I finished, she sighed deeply and said, "I've been thinking about this a lot since we last talked." She admitted she'd gone back and watched some of the videos after I left. She said she was shocked to realize how little I appeared in them. "It wasn't intentional," she said, "but looking back, I can see how it feels that way. I'm sorry." Hearing her apologize felt like a weight lifting off my chest. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear those words until that moment. Mom tried to explain her side, though she admitted it wasn't an excuse. She said that when I was younger, I was so independent and self-sufficient that she assumed I didn't need the same attention as my siblings. She also admitted that my older brother was a handful and my younger sister was very clingy, which naturally pulled her focus. "I thought you liked being in the background," she said. "I didn't realize it hurt you." I told her it wasn't about blame, but about acknowledgement. I needed her to see that being overlooked had lasting effects, even if it wasn't intentional. She seemed to genuinely understand, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were on the same page. At this point, my dad came into the room. He'd been outside working on something but must have overheard part of our talk. He sat down and asked if he could say something. My dad isn't a man of many words, so when he does speak, it usually carries weight. He said, "Your mom and I didn't handle everything perfectly, and I think we both owe you an apology. We got caught up in the chaos of raising 3 kids and didn't always stop to think about how our actions or inactions affected you." It was honestly shocking to hear him say this. My dad isn't the type to admit fault easily, but he looked me straight in the eye and said, "I'm sorry, kiddo. I hope we can do better moving forward." That broke me. I started crying, and my mom hugged me. It felt like a breakthrough moment for all of us. After the visit, I decided to reach out to my siblings again. My younger sister was supportive and even apologized for not noticing how I felt growing up. She said she'd been so wrapped up in her own life that she hadn't considered how the family dynamics might have affected me. My older brother, on the other hand, was less understanding. He doubled down on his stance that I was being too sensitive and said I needed to let it go. At this point, I've decided to take a step back from him for my own sanity. You can't force someone to see your perspective if they're unwilling. Clarifications. Some of you asked if I'd ever explicitly told my parents how I felt before now. The truth is, I hadn't. I think I was so used to downplaying my emotions and avoiding conflict that I didn't know how to start that conversation. This experience has taught me that bottling things up only leads to more pain down the line. Another common question was whether this experience has changed how I approach my relationships. The answer is absolutely. I'm learning to advocate for myself and set boundaries, even if it's uncomfortable. It's not easy, but it's necessary for my own well-being. Edits. A few of you suggested therapy, and I've taken that advice to heart. I've started seeing a counselor, and it's been incredibly helpful to unpack everything and learn healthier ways to communicate. Also, some people thought I should demand an apology from my older brother, but honestly, I'm not sure it's worth the energy. I'd rather focus on strengthening the relationships that matter to me and letting go of the ones that don't. Update 3 months later. Hi everyone, I'm back with what will probably be my final update. So much has happened since my last post, and I want to thank all of you for the advice, encouragement, and even the tough love some of you offered. I've spent the past few months reflecting, rebuilding relationships, and prioritizing my own mental health, and I wanted to share where things stand now. First, the good news. Things with my mom have improved drastically. After our heart-to-heart, she really followed through on her promise to be more present and intentional in our relationship. It's been baby steps, but she's making an effort. For example, she started calling me regularly just to check in, which never used to happen. She even sent me a framed picture of us together from my childhood, a photo I'd never even seen before. It was a small gesture, but it meant so much to me. We've also been having more honest conversations. She's opened up about her own childhood and how that shaped the way she parented. It doesn't excuse anything, but it gives me a better understanding of where she was coming from. It feels like we're finally seeing each other as people, not just as mom and daughter. My dad has been more low-key about it, but he's also making an effort. He's not the type to gush emotions, but he's been including me more in family plans and even asked me to help him with a home project recently, something he usually only does with my brother. It's progress, and I'll take it. Speaking of my brother, well, not much has changed there. After our last conversation, I decided to stop chasing his approval or understanding. It's been hard because I've always wanted a closer relationship with him, but I've realized that I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep him warm. He's still dismissive of my feelings and insists on making a big deal out of nothing. I've stopped trying to engage with him on the topic, and honestly, it's been freeing. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is let go of someone who isn't willing to meet you halfway. On the other hand, my younger sister has been an absolute rock. She's been checking in on me, validating my feelings, and even calling out our brother when he brushes me off. She told me she regrets not noticing how I felt growing up and that she's committed to being more mindful moving forward. We've grown so much closer through this process. She's even planning a sisters-only weekend trip for us, which is something we've never done before. It feels good to have her in my corner. Now for the question a lot of you asked about, the family videos. After my visit, my parents went through the footage together and decided to make a new compilation that includes more of me. They presented it to me as a kind of do-over gift. I won't lie, watching the new video was emotional. It still doesn't erase the years of feeling overlooked, but it's a step in the right direction. It shows that they're listening and trying, and that means more to me than words can express. Clarifications. A few of you raised valid points about how I've been handling things, and I've taken that feedback to heart. For example, some people suggested I might be holding on to resentment too tightly. You're not wrong, and I'm working on letting go of the bitterness. I've also realized that my parents aren't mind readers. While they should have noticed my feelings growing up, I didn't exactly make it easy for them by keeping everything bottled up. This doesn't absolve them, but it's something I'm trying to keep in mind as we move forward. one of the biggest changes in my life has been focusing on therapy. My counselor has helped me unpack a lot of the hurt and resentment I've been carrying for years. I've started to see my family not just through the lens of my own pain, but as flawed people who did their best with the tools they had. That doesn't mean I'm letting them off the hook, but it does mean I'm finding room for compassion. It's been a tough journey, but I feel lighter than I have in years. Edits. For those of you who asked if I've confronted my brother one last time, no, I haven't. I've decided that my energy is better spent on relationships that nurture me rather than drain me. I hope that one day he'll come around, but if not, I'll be okay. As for my parents, I think we're finally on a path to healing. It won't be perfect, and I'm sure there will still be bumps along the way, but for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. Thank you all for coming on this journey with me. Your comments and messages have been a source of comfort and strength, and I'm so grateful for this community. If there are any major updates in the future, I'll be sure to share, but for now, I'm focusing on rebuilding and moving forward. Sending love to all of you who've been through similar struggles. You're not alone.